am a certified professional organizer, and I work with individuals with all sorts of clutter problems. And the number one thing that I saw time and time and time again is paper. Like, paper organization is a struggle. That's just all there is to it. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces to paper organization, and so we're going to go through today and talk about those different types of moving parts and pieces, give you kind of an overview of what you're going to learn in this class, and then just dive right into it. So, okay, moving on. So we're going to talk today about the paper filing system. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of having an actual tangible piece of paper versus scanning and online storage. So there's pros and cons to both. We're going to discuss both of those. We're going to again go through the weekly class overview so you know what you're going to be able to take away with each and every single week. We're going to talk about what course supplies, so what supplies are helpful when you're dealing with paper organization and management. I have a color coordinating chart that's really, really helpful for individuals as they're sorting through things. We're going to talk today a little bit about learning styles and how that affects how you will file or how you will keep paperwork. And of course, can't have a paper conversation without having those perfectionist tendencies. You create these micro-organized systems and they just are impossible to maintain. So we're going to talk about those and how those always lead into or can lead into negative self-talk, and how paper organization or disorganization brings that about. And then we're going to talk about breaking that into bite-sized pieces. So some of this, if you have joined me before in one of the webinars, you're going to see some common themes along the way, but it's always really good to reinforce that learning. Okay, paper filing pros and cons. So having an actual tangible piece of paper. For individuals that are either tactile, so that like the touch of things, or visual, where they like to see things like a big picture learner, those having an actual tangible paper, it can be really, really helpful. It also allows you to move files around and see the big picture of how files get moved, and then you can like create this picture in your mind of where something will go before it even goes there. A lot of the times you will get individuals who are fearful of something being lost. This can go both ways. They can be fearful of it being lost in technology, or they can get fearful of it being lost in a filing system and never being able to find it again. And there's filing systems in place. There's lots and lots of options and choices available. The best ones are the most streamlined, the easiest, the least complex. Those are the ones that you're going to be able to find what you need. Some individuals have a really hard time reading things for a long time on the computer. That causes some eye strain. And so having an actual tangible printed out piece of paper is really, really helpful for that. And so those are some of the pros and some of the cons that can come around with it. When we talk about like a scanning and online storage, some of the pros and cons of this. Definitely we're looking at the ease of being able to hit the search button and do like keyword searches. Those are fantastic to be able to do. However, if you don't have a paper filing system online, or if you don't have a paper filing system in place, it's really hard to know where to find those pieces, those papers in your filing system. So I always say to duplicate what you've actually created with your tangible paper files. So if you have lots of papers around, if you want to create an actual tangible, physical paper system, then you can then go through methodically, scan it, and then just dispose of the paper if you want. It makes it so that you have the files labeled accordingly. If that doesn't appeal to your senses, like if you're a real technical person, then creating an outline of what papers are going to go into each particular category means that you can create then the files, and inside the files have your subfolders for these different particular things. There's always the fear, like fear goes with both sides, whether it's with the paper side or whether it's an online side, there's always the fear that comes about with it that something could be crashed. Like you could have your computer crash and all of your paperwork is on there. You have the fear of something being hacked and now your private information is out there on the dark web, or that your computer or your personal items could be stolen. So again, those are all things that are pros and cons. You have to decide what is the absolute best for you. So I'm not going to tell you which way is the right way or the wrong way because you have to choose that. One of the other pros is it's easier to have things online if you do a lot of moving around or if you're doing a lot of traveling where you need to be able to access this information from a different location. Then having it online, like on a storage, like on a cloud, is a lot easier. Okay, I am going to teach you how to physically create a paper filing system. If you've decided that you want to do an online storage, then know that you can mirror it from what I'm teaching. But this is what I teach. A lot of my clients really, truly want to have those papers. They want to have control of it. They want to be able to see it. They want to be able to soothe their anxiety by being able to pull out the paper. So that's what I'm teaching in this class. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. These are the 7 weeks after this week of what we're actually going to be teaching. And this is a downloadable PDF. And it talks about, we're going to talk about, like, next week, we're going to talk about sorting. Like, how do we create a sorting area? And what does it do for you? And how is that really going to, like, reduce the amount of papers that come into your home? It's a really, it's a great concept, and it's really actually pretty easy to put into an application. And once you do, you realize that you can, once you sort at the very beginning of it, the amount of papers that you have to filter through become a lot less. Okay, week 3, which is on here, number 2, is processing. So papers you have to sort, you're going to process, and then you're going to file. The processing are the papers that you actually have to do something with. This is the active paperwork. You have to pay a bill, you have to do a phone call, you have a discrepancy on something, you need to read it, you need to file it, like that would be something you'd have to do. But this is something you actually have to do with this piece of paper. This is not the bill that you've already paid that you have to file that you want to keep. This is, I still need to do something with it. I call it processing. You're going to process that paperwork before it moves into the filing component of it. Okay, and then the third part of this, or week 4, is going to be filing. So this is actually a broader spectrum of filing. I am not going to go through the finite minutia of filing the paperwork. This is going to be a broader component of it. When you're talking about creating an actual filing system, it takes a little bit longer than what we have here in order to do that. So I can give you some either online support that comes about with it, some references to come about with it. There's online classes that I teach, all sorts of things going on, but you will have a broad understanding of it as we move forward. Week 5 is all about your vital documents. These are all about the things that prove who you are and what you need to keep, where you should keep them, why you need to keep them. I talk pretty extensively about what's called an emergency document checklist in this particular week. This is preparing yourself for an emergency. Like, we talk about preparing ourselves for a natural disaster. We talk about food and shelter and lighting and heating, but no one ever talks about what happens if the worst case scenario happens and you don't have a single document to prove who you are. What do you do then? How does that come about? How are we going to reinvent who we are, right? How do we prove that we had these particular vehicles? Or how do we prove that we had this retirement? Or who do we even call to figure out where our retirement was? And who do we call to pay? So these are all the types of things that I talk about in this particular week. not a super exciting week as far as it's not a fun topic to think about the worst case scenario. But I tell you what, when you have all of these documents together, when you have that peace of mind, knowing that if you had less than 10 minutes to get out of your home, like they just recently had in Colorado, you could grab your vital documents, you could grab your kids, you could grab your photos, and you can be out the door. Everything else is replaceable. So, and your animals, obviously. Okay, week 5, or on here, it's week 6. So on this one, we're going to talk about setting up an actual office area and how that is going to set your mindset for creating systems, routines, and how to choose the right location for this. What supplies are helpful, what to look for in a desk. What about a filing cabinet? Like, nobody talks about what to look for in a filing cabinet. Again, I'm teaching paper organization. So we need to have a place for all these papers that are just floating around our house. And then week 7, we're going to talk about the fun stuff like the memorabilia paperwork. Like, what do you do when your kids make all this artwork and you have it all over the place and you don't know how to contain it and it's driving you crazy, but you don't want to throw it away because they made it and it's special, right? We're going to talk about how to contain that, how to keep those really special ones. We're going to talk about how to organize your pictures. We're going to talk about, organizing special cards that you get from individuals. Maybe they're not here any longer and they're really just sentimental to you. And then on week 8, which will be our final week together, we're going to talk about everything else that is paper that we don't even think about. We don't think about the fact that a lot of the times we print out recipes and now we've got these recipes floating around the house that we don't know what to do with, or actual greeting cards that we purchased to give, but they float around the house, or the school papers. Like, there is a ton of paperwork that comes from the schools. I don't know how they manage to do it, but they do. And then there is a ton of warranties and instruction manuals that we get. And we're like, what do we do with all these? Like, there's obviously online options, but what if I want to keep it, right? And then we talk also about passwords and password managers. That is what you're going to get in the next 8 weeks. So, a lot of information. Again, most people only think about paper organizing as the beginning, the basics of it, the sorting, processing, and filing. We only think about the actual bills that we receive or the financial paperwork. We don't think about the other areas of paper organization and how that really truly does fill in all the parts and pieces and make clutter if we don't have the right systems in place. Okay, moving on. So again, we're talking about the sorting component of it. This is again in week 2. Week 3, I talked about this. We're going to talk about, again, locations, supplies, workflow, lighting, all of that. Week 4, we talked about this and how to actually create a system where you're actually processing the paperwork. Week 5 is going to be the filing cabinets and the banker's boxes and the shredders and what to look for. And then there's a actual filing system that I teach in that particular week. Again, week 6 is the emergency document checklist. Week 7 is going to be all about your kids' memorabilia. And then, of course, week 8, which we just talked about, is all the greeting cards, recipes, all that fun stuff. Okay, so here is a course list. These are some of the actual items that are going to be helpful as you are going through if you're creating the system that we are talking about. These are some of the things that you're going to find are going to be helpful to make you successful. Obviously, pens and tape and Post-it notes, which I use for labeling all sorts of great things. I believe in using the green hanging folders that fit in the filing cabinets, and I do not actually use the manila folders that go inside of them. I find that they are just redundant. They take up a lot of space. They create their own clutter. It's crazy. And then also in banker's boxes. So if you don't have a filing cabinet, what can you do? You can use banker's boxes to create a system. Then when you can see how much you have of it, you can then choose to go get a filing cabinet that will fit your needs. Or there's all sorts of options available for filing also. It doesn't have to be a filing cabinet. So there's lots of options available depending on your desire and your ability. Okay, paper sacks are great for recycling paperwork that you no longer need, like all those expired coupons or ads or buy this, like whatever it is, right? Garbage can, because inevitably when you're going through things, there are things that should go in the garbage and not the recycling. They just show up randomly. Don't know how, but they do. And then I like to use a reusable shopping bag. And these are those plasticky ones that we get. And I will use a Post-it note and I will write shred on 4 Post-it notes and I staple it or tape it to that reusable shopping bag. This is so as you are sorting through and you're like, oh, that should really be shredded, it has a place to go. It's not just being put down and you're having to remember to go back to shred it. This actually goes into this particular bag so that you can shred it later on or take it into one of those facilities that shred it for you for free. Okay, recommended but absolutely not necessary is the Freedom Filer system, which I talk about later on. That's the actual filing system, a filing cabinet and shredder, obviously. And then optionals are different types of baskets to contain different things, label makers, and then of course, you know, like a desk organizer or different types of containers for your office supplies. Okay, then here's the other component. When you are sorting the actual items, like when you're going through and sorting through your paperwork, again, items show up that aren't paperwork. So it's really helpful to have a place for these things to go to. If you're sorting through your office, it's more than likely that you're going to come up with some garbage that comes in there. Like a lot of people eat at their desk, like that's just a common thing to do. And so there might be garbage in there from maybe some containers. There might be some recycling from either pop cans or water bottles or whatever the case may be. And we talked about the recycling for the paper sacks. If you have a lot of recyclables in your home, you can use the tall paper leaf bags for that. And then I'm not going to talk much about the other ones, but this is really a great option. You can print this off, put it in your rooms, and make it so that everybody knows what color bag those things go in. Okay, we're going to talk about your senses and how this really makes a difference when you are dealing with paperwork, because it's just amazing. So if you are someone who is a visual person and you find that there's too much stimulation going on and around, you're going to want to have containers to contain individual items and grouping them together. And you're going to be happier if those items are contained in similar color baskets. So if you find that you get really visually stimulated with a lot of bright colors, then going with more of a neutral color, keeping them in baskets, or containers and making sure they have nice labels on them so you know exactly what is there. You might find that you're better off with a cabinet that has doors on it. So you open it up, you can totally see everything that's there in containers again. But when you're not using it, they go behind the closed doors and you can easily reduce the stress, right? You'll find that labels are going to be your friend, but you want them to all be very similar. You want them all to be cohesive. You're going to be happier with labels that are printed versus handwritten. It doesn't mean that when you're setting up the system, you can't handwrite them and then come back and actually print them. But it's having things be consistent is really, really helpful. Being aware of patterns, right? Patterns can cause people a lot of stress and anxiety. Sometimes they can be a great visual, like if you're one that it's that in that green container, right? Then that is something that you can draw upon and then work with from there. But be aware of patterns and colors and how that can actually heighten your stress and anxiety. And prints and stripes make it hard to find words that are written on them. They're really pretty, but it's really hard sometimes to be able to find what's labeled on those particular prints and stripes. So that's if you have a visual component to it. If you are about hearing, right, you're going to find that you are going to be able to concentrate mostly when you have like some casual music going on in the background. Maybe not super loud, but maybe just some music going on. Maybe it is listening to a podcast that's really helpful to keep you engaged in whatever it is that you're working on. books on tape, a call with a friend. Those particular things can be useful if you are, let's say, filing something or just doing some sorting. So I'm going to use this as an example. One of the weeks I teach about greeting cards, and if you have a whole stack of greeting cards and all you need to do is determine if it's a birthday card or if it's a different type of occasion, again, it's not something that requires a whole lot of like thought process. You can easily open it up, and if it says happy birthday, you know it goes into the happy birthday pile. But to keep you engaged, to keep you motivated, to keep you moving on this, it might be helpful for you to call up a friend and just chat with a friend, and all of a sudden you look down and all of the cards will be sorted and you hadn't even thought about it, right? Or maybe you've listened to a really fascinating podcast. So those are different types of ways that you can indeed keep yourself moving forward as we're doing this. I wouldn't use this podcast, books on tape, or calling a friend if you're dealing with your financial paperwork, but for just kind of the random paperwork that we're organizing, it's helpful. Okay, smell. You'll find that individuals that really like the whole smell, you can get aromatic scents that actually keep you, like, your mind sharp and bright and clean. You can use a candle, essential oil, incenses. You can boil water with different types of either oils in them or fresh fruit or different types of spices in there. Those can actually create that ability to focus a little bit more. Taste. Interesting, right? But when we sit down at our desk, are you one that all of a sudden you're like, I have to have gum, right? Do you have to have gum or a mint? You can use ginger or hard candy. And that, again, can like stimulate you as you're moving forward in this other component. It also acts kind of like a setting the stage, for lack of a better term. You know, when you were younger and you put on the apron and you knew you were going to cook, right? You can do the same thing with these particular senses. You know that if you put a piece of gum in your mouth, you're going to sit down and do your paperwork. Or you're going to, if you put on a specific music, you know that you have 30 minutes to do this particular thing. And it can just keep your mind engaged and active. Okay, kinesthetic, for those of you that cannot sit still, yeah, I know this one, using either a stand-up desk or an exercise ball, like those are really, really helpful. However, I don't want you to be confused if you think that you're kinesthetic when you're actually tactile, okay? So individuals that are tactile sometimes think that they're kinesthetic because their fingers are always moving. The kinesthetic individuals are going to like smooth rocks. More than likely, they're not going to like the feel of like microfiber. You can always tell someone that's kinesthetic because they're constantly, their hand is grazing over things, right? And like I said, you think that you're kinesthetic because you're constantly moving, but you're moving because you're looking for that feel. So you're going to find that if you've got a tactile sensitivity, how a keyboard feels like when you're typing on a keyboard, that is super going to be a big thing for you versus someone's like, the keys feel differently. No big deal, right? But someone that's tactile, they'll be like, I don't like how hard it is, or it feels like it's getting sticky, or whatever the case may be. Okay, moving on, micro-organizing and perfectionism. Okay, this is, I see this all the time. So we get so concerned with being able to find the paperwork that we create these highly complicated, completely unmanageable filing systems or organizing systems, and it becomes impossible to maintain. And what I mean by that is, instead of things being a little bit more broad, right? So maybe we have maybe medical bills. Maybe instead of it just being medical bills for a filing system, it's this particular doctor and this particular doctor and this particular doctor, instead of just having medical bills paid for and the year. And it becomes so difficult and you spend so much time. You'll find that if you are refining these organizational systems again and again, you may have some perfectionistic tendencies. In this, we want to look at progress. Progress is the key here, not just trying to make it perfect. Perfectionists have a tendency to sometimes get stuck even beginning because they're trying to process what a perfect system will look like. So if that's you, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the future. But you will find that you are an all or nothing thinker. So these are black or white a lot of the time. So this is situations and cases where, you know, if you can't do it right 100%, sometimes they just won't start at all. Fear of making a mistake is someone who has maybe some perfectionistic tendencies. Sometimes it's just really truly that you just don't know, like you've just never been taught. And so you have to determine, is this just a skill set that I need to acquire and then I can move forward? Is that what I'm stuck with? Or am I stuck because I really think I'm trying to find the right system, right? And there is 100% not a 100% right system for everybody, because we all have different likes, different styles, different learning, different comfort levels. Somebody may be totally happy to not have a single piece of paper anywhere in their home. Others, not so much, right? So we've got to find the system that's right for you. And that's what we're going to do. Okay. Moving on. So this is important to understand, that organization helps with the overwhelm, right? So this is where you get stuck, right? You don't know where to start. You don't know what to do. You're getting stuck in this paper filing system, and you just don't know. And so that leads to this overwhelm, and overwhelm leads to paper piles. And this overwhelm leads to the frustration. And this frustration, because you have all these piles throughout your home, leads to feeling like you're out of control, feeling like you're never on top of things, that, you know, you're always just being reactionary. That's another feeling that can come about with this. This feeling of out of control can lead to this all or nothing thinking. And this all or nothing thinking leads to this negative self-talk. And so we think of paper organization just as that, just paper organization. But we don't realize how much is connected to this negative self-talk, because of the fact that when we're talking about paper, again, going back to this paper filing system, when we talk about this, we're talking about the financial component of paper a lot of the times. That's what we think about. And that financial component of paperwork plays into our mindset, right? We get this, I can't believe I didn't do that. I can't, you know, so all these different negative words that come along with it, like, I can't, right? I can't do that, or I need to do that, or I have to do that, or I should do that. Like, these are all the words that we use time and time and time again. And in doing this, we find that, I find with individuals, that when we use these words, I'm gonna give an example. So if I say I have to go do something, what I'm doing to myself is I am creating this resistance within myself. And this resistance is going to have me avoid doing what I want to do, or what I think I should do, right? And because this resistance is there, it is causing me to procrastinate even longer. Now, this resistance usually shows up when we are younger, right? When we don't have when we have no control over what it is that we are going to be doing. When we are young and we are living with our parents and they say, you have to go clean your room. And we're like, I don't want to clean my room, right? And we get this like back and forth battle that comes about, because we don't want to be told what we have to do. So when we say to ourselves, I have to do something, then we create this resistance. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to do anything, but you will live with the consequences of the choices of your actions. If you choose not to do something, you're going to live with whatever the consequences are for that. In the same token, by changing the words, we give yourself the power. Instead of saying, I have to do that, saying, I am choosing to do that, I'm going to do that, makes it so that you are not creating that resistance within yourself. When you don't have this resistance, you're more open and willing to take care of things. When we're talking about paper organization, we're talking about learning something that has never been taught to you. Like, it's not taught in the school systems. It's not taught at home, because by the time you're ready to move out, you're like, I'm out of here. I don't want to listen to anything else from our parents, right? We're just like on our own. And now when we first move out, we're like, this is no big deal. I got this, right? Because we don't have much in the way of paperwork. But then all of a sudden we start getting more and more paperwork. We're talking about, oh, we get a job and it has a retirement. Well, now what do I do with that retirement paperwork? Oh, and I bought a car. So now I've got a car and car payments, and ooh, what do I do with that particular paperwork? Oh, and don't even get me started when we have kids, right? They come with their own plethora of paperwork and clutter. Like, it is amazing what one little munchkin can bring, right? And so understanding that paper organization and paper management gets tied into these emotional components for something that you were never taught. Like, it's just how it is. So we have a tendency to beat ourselves up because we have piles of paperwork throughout the house, even though we have never been taught how to deal with those piles of paperwork. And we think that we listen to somebody else and we're like, oh, they should do it this, you should do it this way, or this is what I do, which is great, but we don't take into consideration our own particular learning styles. So just on this particular negative self-talk, if you find that there is one word that you have a tendency to say more frequently than not, so I would always have a tendency to say, I need to. Like, that was my go-to. Like, if I was going to say a negative thing, it was going to be I need to. Instead, now I say I'm going to, or I'm choosing to. So we all say it. You're not going to be able to completely avoid it, but trying to reduce the amount of times that we say it and catch ourselves when we're into that spiral effect will be really, really helpful in being able to move forward as you are going through your paperwork. The other thing to understand is that paperwork has delayed decisions that have been there. It's just all there is to it. You're going to unbury some of those things that maybe should have been taken care of, there's the should word again, a while back. And in doing this and uncovering this, it can bring up all of those negative feelings about with it. So we're going to really be focusing in on that. We're going to look at this as an opportunity to learn and to grow and to continue to move forward instead of continuing to beat ourselves up with this particular skill set that we're learning. So again, watch your negative words. Okay, moving on. Bite-sized pieces. Okay, this is super, super common. This goes back to that all or nothing thinking. This also comes back to this frustration level of, oh my gosh, like, I just want it all done. I want it all gone. I just wish it could all go away. I'm just tired of dealing with it. It just drives me crazy, right? So when we go through, and if you have piles of paperwork throughout your home, I'm going to go back here for just a second. I want to show you guys this. If we have piles of paperwork throughout our home, coming back here to this home organization chart that is a free PDF, I want you to create 3 different types of boxes, right? You can have a box that's marked papers to sort, literally just picking them up, putting them in a box and calming your mind. Like, instead of them all over the place, You've gone through, you've kind of pulled out the important stuff, right? Maybe you've put it into your processing or active paperwork box, right? And that way you know that this is stuff you have to deal with, or maybe you keep it in a folder right on top of your desk, right? That if the important stuff that you know you need to deal with, it needs to be kept where you will be able to look at it and deal with it. But let's say you collect all of your paperwork and you're going through and you're deciding, okay, what am I going to do? The first component of it is to sort. Sort out all of the junk mail, like all of it. You don't need it. I can guarantee you that it will come back around again. So get rid of the Valpak coupons and the extra ads and the grocery stores. Like, just eliminate those from the very get-go. Then you'll have box number 2, which is going to be your active paperwork. This is the paperwork that you're going to need to do something with. It can be a box, it can be a binder, it can be a file, it can be a basket, it can be anything you want it to be. But here's the most important thing of all of this. You need to label each particular box. So if box number 1, if you've decided that you are just tired with the paperwork, you're going to be dealing with it, you just need to get it up off of your area, and you decide to pick up all the papers and put it in the box, mark it papers to sort. I want it marked on all 4 sides so that if the box gets put up against a wall, you're not playing the guessing game of what it is, because that always happens. Always happens. You label the box and inevitably that's the side that ends up against the wall. I don't know how it magically does it, but it does. Okay. Then as we're sorting through the paperwork, we're going to come across the papers that we need to do something with. Okay. Those are going to stay out. Box number 3, we are going to have a box that's marked to file. This is all the paperwork that you know you want to keep, but you have absolutely no idea where to keep it yet, right? But containing your paper in one of these 3 categories will significantly reduce the amount of paper clutter throughout your home. So 3 boxes, papers to sort. Box number 2, your active paperwork or papers that you're processing, okay? Box number 3, papers to file. Breaking that paperwork into those particular 3 categories makes a humongous difference for yourself. Okay, moving back down here to where we were. Okay, bite-sized pieces. If when you are going through and you choose not to do your 3 boxes, or maybe you do have your 3 boxes and then you're like looking at this huge pile of papers that are marked papers to sort, you can take these smaller bags, like the reusable or the shopping bags that we were getting, and you can put a small amount of paperwork into each bag and then stack that inside the box. Then your goal for the day can be to do a bag a day or a bag a week, whatever it is. You can use this as your goalpost. That way you don't, again, sit down and think you have to spend hours going through all of this paperwork. That's what exhausts us. And we're going to talk about when we get to a point where we're exhausted, we don't want to deal with it anymore. And our bodies remember, like they know, our bodies know when we get exhausted, they're like, absolutely not doing this anymore. Sorry, want to avoid it at all costs. Versus we sit down and we're like, okay, so my goal is to do 1 bag this week. If I get that 1 bag done, I feel really successful, right? That's my goal. Or 1 bag every other day, whatever it is, whatever you decide, make sure it is indeed obtainable, okay? It will all come about if you do it small, bite-sized pieces at a time. Okay. The other thing that you can do if you don't have these plastic bags is you can use those binder clips. Those binder clips are a great size. You can group the papers together, binder clip them, and then you know that that is another packet, right? That's what we're looking for, is a small packet of papers that you're going to sort and deal with and then move on. Okay. Finally, for today, we're going to talk about the goals. Like, I want you guys to determine what your goals are for this paperwork, for this class. And I don't want it to be for all the papers to go away. That's too big of a goal, right? But what would a good goal be for you? Would a good goal be that you are on top of your papers that you have to process, your active paperwork? Is the goal for you to reduce, the piles off of the kitchen table? Is a good goal for you to be able to contain all of the kids' artwork and have that all grouped together and feel really good about it? Is a good goal for you to determine who's going to be the bill payer in the house, who's going to be the person to determine the paperwork in your house? Sometimes that is the goal, right? Is just to determine who's actually in charge of all this. Sometimes it's an actual conversation, and sometimes it's just by default. And if it's just by default, are you frustrated because it defaulted to you, right? Because that, again, can also create resistance. And the resistance is going to cause you to want to avoid things. So lots of underlying things that come about with this particular conversation with paper organization. Okay, coming back to this, I want to go back to one particular component here. Okay, and view slideshow. Okay, coming back to, whoops, one up above. Coming back to this particular list, when I talk about gathering course supplies, these are the items that are suggested. These are helpful. There's a reason why I suggest them. When we talk about the pen, I'm actually a fan of permanent markers also because they're dark and your eyes instantly trail to them. Tape, I use the tape specifically because the Post-it notes don't always stick. Right? They just don't. And these hanging file folders are great because then paperwork is standing up. It's not laying down. Kind of like when we stand up, we are up and active. But when we're laying down, there's nothing going on. We are like checked out. It's the same thing with paperwork. If we can have paperwork be active, we're more likely to see it. So I just wanted to make sure I talked about that. I will show you the Freedom Filer system in week 4 because it is the filing system that I recommend for my clients, but you can also make your own. So just going back to that and stop sharing. Okay. Any questions for the moment? Anybody have any questions that came through with the chat? Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Rick.
Yep. I was just saying, just raise your hand in the chat window and we'll unmute you. And while they're thinking about it, I noticed the woman at the desk in your previous slide. I used to work at a desk that was like the size of an aircraft carrier with drawers and file cabinets and everything, and it was a disaster. Now I work from a desk like that woman in the graphic. It's just a desk. It has no drawers. There's nothing on it except what I'm working on. And I think as an ADHD defense system, no clutter visible on my desk is not even reachable. If I want something, I have to get up and go get it.
Nice, nice. I like a small drawer for me personally, for like pens and pencils and letter openers and things like that. But yeah, you can also create those by using a cup. You can put a cup that has, I like to use unpopped popcorn or non-cooked split peas in there so that then the ink pens don't hit the bottom of them and break and get all icky and yucky. And B, things actually stand up in there. So that actually is quite lovely.
That's a good idea. Actually, I have an empty shelf to the side of my desk here, and it has a notepad, which people see me use once in a while when I'm doing a class or something, and a couple pens. But that's pretty much the only thing on my desk that I can reach that doesn't pertain to what we're doing right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I just find, as a very distractible guy, it's really nice to actually have to get up to get something. It's easy.
Right.
If I really want it, I can get up, but I actually have to get up. So it really helps.
Nice. That's a good thought process.
Anybody
Anything in the
else?
chat?
No, not. I think I dominated the chat. Sorry. I was just putting comments in there as you went. I really like a lot of these ideas. I've worked pretty hard to digitize everything and get rid of papers for a number of reasons. Papers are, you could have a flood, you could have a fire, you could, whatever. You might be in South Lake Tahoe when you need it, right? Whatever it is, it might be back home. So I really like the keeping things in the cloud. I think it's more secure. People say paper is secure because you got it in your hand, but I don't think so. I think papers can be lost, stolen, damaged, and they're hard to find. If it's in the cloud, you could be in Paris and pull it down. You could have it. It wouldn't really matter where you were at. So, and really secure these days.
And like other people might go on the other side of saying it's online, like it's hackable. And so it's a personal preference. And that's why I say I teach the actual paper component of it, and then you get to decide what's best for you.
Yeah.
And then if you understand how the tangible paper system works, you can mirror that into an online storage. So your computer doesn't become the same cluttered mess, right? Because that can happen, right? We have files all over the place. We don't know where any of it goes. And it can be really hard to be able to find it. And it went into this place when it should have gone here, and so it's not secure, but I thought it was. Like a lot of different things can come about.
I would say my answer to that, yes, that online is hackable, but these are billion-dollar companies, and they can defend themselves better than you can defend your own house. So if someone can steal stuff, it's more likely to be a relative stealing something in your own house. Most crimes are actually property crimes committed by people that have access to you. And I get it. There's all different ways of looking at it.
Yep, but that's also why I teach the emergency document checklist, exactly for that.
Yeah.
Or people stealing the mail, exactly. Yeah, that seems to be a huge issue right now, is mail and package theft.
Yeah, that's a good reason to go paperless, not just for the environment, but also so people don't steal your credit card statement out of the mail, out of your mailbox.
Yeah. Yeah, identity theft is a huge thing. We talk about that a little bit in week 8. And if you have a credit monitoring company, making sure that they will pay for reinstating your credit and fighting to get things off of your credit report and fighting to make sure that you get your identity back. Yeah, it's a huge thing that you never thought about. Like, you have to worry about it for your kids. That happens a lot, where all of a sudden they're an adult now and they're going out on their own and they're like, oh, you've got poor credit. And they're like, how do I have credit? I've never owned anything, right? And so, where they've used their social security number for whatever reason, like, yeah, there's so much to it.
Yeah, and as Miss Taj put in the chat window there, mail does get stolen. There's no doubt about that. It's one of the way they do it. Dumpster divers. There's all kinds of things, which is why you should have a good paper shredder. If you are still getting paper bills, you should have a good paper shredder that cross shreds, whatever it is.
Yep. We talk all about paper shredders and what to look for in a paper shredder in one of the classes. So got a whole entire pamphlet on that. Good. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was trying to read Karen Campbell's. Karen, if you want to say it, I can unmute you. A great way to organize your documents is LastPass, which I'm not familiar with. But there's a variety of different things. Oh, go ahead.
LastPass is an online password manager. It's what I use. It's really great for keeping your passwords in one centralized location. Online, you have one specific password that only you know, and then it creates passwords for the rest of your account. You can upload documents to LastPass, And you can also make it so you can have family members have access to your passwords after a specific period of time. So prime example, you get into a car accident, you can't get into whatever accounts, or they can't get into whatever accounts, your online accounts. You can make it so that after, 3 days or 7 days or whatever, LastPass will send you out an email that says, hey, this person is requesting access to your account. And do you give them, if you don't give them permission, notify us and we won't release it. If you don't do anything, then they then have access to your account and your passwords. It's really helpful for all sorts of reasons. You're incapacitated, you're the primary person that is in charge of all of the paperwork and your bills, and now all of a sudden you're not able to take care of that. Then the family isn't scrambling trying to rebuild everything that you've already built.
Yeah, I agree. I think password vaults, basically what you're talking about, there's several of them out there that are pretty good. Another reason I like having things online is that if I want to share a particular document with someone, I don't have to go look for it. I don't have to worry about whether I filed it correctly. I find it, I can search for it, or hopefully I have filed it correctly. And then I can share that one particular document without sharing anything else.
Yes. Yeah. LastPass offers that too, where you can, they have a family particular plan where you can have LastPass for different family members, and then you can upload their personal documents, and then they only have access to their personal documents.
Right.
I'm sure I don't utilize everything that LastPass has. I chose that because a lot of my therapist colleagues use that. So I know that it is approved for that particular purpose.
Yep. And I think that's a really good way to buy things in general. If they're referred by somebody else who's kind of in your tribe doing the same kind of things, and it's working for them, that's good. There are also HIPAA compliant kind of things in case you're in a kind of business where you're getting people's personal information, which you're actually required to have that. You never want to be sending your private information by email. It's for people who know how to read that, it's just so easy for them to snag that out of the air.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other thoughts, comments, questions as we're wrapping up for the day?
Somebody's asking, where do you store your documents? I think that actually, if I go back, that's Karen. Yeah.
So I have my documents stored in 2 different locations. I have just my everyday documents stored in a fireproof filing cabinet that's locked. And then I also have what's called my emergency document kit. So my emergency documents, my vital documents, I actually have them in a fireproof bag that's inside a safe that's bolted. Here's the trick: bolted to the concrete. Like they can't get it. It's bolted to the floor. And so I have it in 2 particular components for fireproof and for waterproof. So I've checked out burn times on both particular items. So that's how I do it. Yes, it is theft proof too. They would have to take out my entire power grid and hopefully get zapped before they were able to get into my safe.
This has been really good. I look forward to the rest of it, the rest of the sessions.
I am looking forward to it. Paper is one of my favorite things to teach. I love paperwork. One of the things that you're going to be very surprised with through this class is what you learn about paper organization and management. You're going to find it mirrors into other parts of your home. My favorite thing of all times is hearing somebody say, I started doing this and I decided that I could actually handle this drawer, and I did it and it looks really good. So share those wins with me, please. That just like motivates me and keeps me like energized, and I love that.
I keep threatening this, but I haven't implemented it yet. We really should start a paper challenge. Maybe we can do it with yours. We used to call it a clutter challenge, where everybody takes a picture of one particular place, could be a desk, could be a closet, the before picture, and then a week later everybody comes back with their after pictures and declutters some space, and maybe we can do that with paper. One last question here, and then I think we do have to wrap up. Beck, you might have to answer this in the next session, but Karen is asking, What do we need to know if we've been working on a particular system for a long time?
A paper system?
But presumably, yep.
Presumably a paper system. What do you need to know? What you need to know is that we can refine it. We can still utilize what you have so long as it is not complicated. And we can refine it from there. And then what you're going to learn after that can be implemented in any different component. What I'm teaching is utilized in everybody's house. You can tweak it and make it your own. That's what I want you to take from it. My job is to give you guidance, ideas, and suggestions. Your job is to implement it and make it work for your learning style. That is that.
Okay, excellent. And then we do have to wrap up because I think Chad's using this and they're probably chomping at the bit right now, waiting for us to be done.
Okay, well, stick with me. I promise it's not the most like beautiful thing in the world, but it is. I will make it fun. I promise I'll make it fun.
Outstanding.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here.